So let's just jump right in. What if I told you that everything we think we know about measuring intelligence is, well, kind of wrong? For a second, just forget about IQ tests, how fast you can do math in your head, all of that. We're about to explore something way, way deeper, a psychological trait that really gets to the heart of what it means to learn and to grow as a person.
So let me just ask you, straight up, what do you think is the biggest sign of low intelligence? Seriously, take a second. What's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it forgetting things? Struggling with numbers? Let's really dig into that.
You see, for the longest time, the big myth was that intelligence is all about what your brain knows. You know, your grades, your test scores, that kind of thing. But what psychology is showing us now is that it's actually about how your brain learns. And the real signs, they're things like mental rigidity, a habit of always blaming someone else, and a total lack of self-reflection.
And that right there brings us to our big idea for today, the rigid mind. This is a concept that goes so far beyond a test score. It really gets to the core of how we deal with the world, with new ideas, and honestly, with ourselves. Okay, so what in the world is mental rigidity? Well, at its most basic level, it's just the inability to adapt. It's when someone is faced with new information, new evidence that contradicts what they believe, and instead of changing their mind, they just dig their heels in even deeper. They just can't bend. Here's a great way to picture it. Think of a healthy tree branch. When the wind blows, it bends. It's flexible. That's a flexible mind. But a rigid mind? It's like an old, brittle branch. When it's put under pressure, it doesn't bend. It just snaps. And that snap? That's anger. It's denial. It's shutting down the conversation. All right, so how does this whole rigid mind thing actually show up in real life? Well, there are two huge telltale signs. And I'm telling you, once you learn to spot them, you'll see them everywhere. The first sign, and honestly, the most common one, is a predictable, constant pattern of blaming everything and everyone else for their problems. It's called external blame. And for this person, nothing is ever their fault. The test was unfair. The boss is a jerk. The team is incompetent. You see, a rigid mind just can't look inward, because that would mean admitting they might be wrong. It's just so much easier to point a finger at the world than to look in the mirror, isn't it? Now, it isn't just about blame. The second sign is this. Well, it's a fascinating paradox. It's the tendency for someone to be incredibly overconfident, especially in the very areas where they are the least skilled. I'm sure you've heard of this. It has a name, the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a cognitive bias where a person's lack of knowledge actually prevents them from seeing their own lack of knowledge. To put it simply, they don't know enough to know how little they know. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. Look at this. On the left, you've got their actual skill. Down here, maybe 20%. Now look on the right. That's where they think their skill level is, all the way up at 85%. That massive gap between reality and perception, that right there is the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's powered by a mind that's just too rigid to see itself clearly. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on the problem, the rigid mind. But what's the flip side? What's the alternative? Well, the answer is something a lot quieter, something a lot of people overlook. It's the power of stillness. Just think about it for a second. The kind of person who can't self-reflect, who can't look inward, they're usually terrified of being alone with their own thoughts. They need constant noise, constant distraction, the phone, the TV, music, anything to avoid the silence. They're always running from themselves. And that's where mental stillness comes in. It's the exact opposite of running. It's the ability to just be, to sit with your own mind, to think, to process, to reflect, even to question yourself. This isn't about being bored. It's about being brave enough to listen to what's going on inside. That's where all the growth happens. And hey, this is not some new idea. The brilliant philosopher Blaise Pascal was talking about this centuries ago. He said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He knew that our refusal to just sit and think is the source of so many of our mistakes. Okay, so let's bring this all together. What's the big takeaway for us right here, right now? How do we use this to shift away from that rigid thinking and toward real, honest-to-goodness growth? The most important thing to get is that these things are not separate. They're all connected in a vicious cycle. See, it all starts with that mental rigidity that makes you unable to see your own weaknesses, which is the Dunning-Kruger effect. That, in turn, makes you rely on external blame because it can't be your fault, right?
And what fuels all of it? A deep fear of mental stillness. Because in the quiet, you might have to face the truth. And avoiding that truth just makes you even more rigid. And on it goes. And this all leads to the final and, I think, the most powerful takeaway from our whole discussion today. After all of this, it's pretty clear that real intelligence has almost nothing to do with having all the answers stored in your brain. The truest, ultimate sign of intelligence is the willingness to question the answers you think you already have. It's the flexibility to step back and say, you know what, maybe I'm wrong about this. That simple act is the seed of all wisdom. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge, a question to just mull over. After hearing all of this, what is one belief you hold, could be big, could be small, that you are willing to honestly reconsider today? Because your answer to that question, well, that's where true intelligence really begins.